All right, looks like we're live. It's another Free Will, Science, and Religion podcast. This one from Google Plus, an open room, and we'll see if anybody shows up. It's kind of early in this process. It's March 21st, 2015 edition. Yeah, so we'll date this one just for the fun of it. And I'm going to go over some words, free will kind of words related to our will and our psychology, and kind of understand the fact that we are just programmed organisms, that we are what happens to us, not much else. It's all really, I mean, the big word might be reflexes, that you're a reflexive organism, and your reflexes are, if they would be thought of as rubber bands stretched, they're rubber bands stretched by your personal experience mostly. What world you are born into. There's lots of discussion about nature and nurture in terms of many of our aspects of our character, and I think we can sort of understand that all progress is essentially a kind of nurture, and our nature is pretty well a pretty animalistic, pretty dumb animal, and everything else is nurture. So in a sense, we've been nurtured by thousands of years of progress as civilization matures, and it's just clearly we become different animals, capable of very different kinds of behavior. We acclimate to a different world. So that's one of the words too, acclimation. So as I have them written down just as a random order, conditioning seems a real obvious will killer. That much of our subjective taste has nothing to do with any preference. We don't choose what foods to like. We don't choose to find certain features in people attractive or sexually interesting. We don't choose much of the basic ingredients that define what comforts you in your life, what you derive pleasure experiencing, even kinds of music, and the range is kind of very broad in terms of the elements of your psychology for which you did not choose to be the kind of elitist you are, the kind of subjective niche kind of person you are. The style, your style is not something you choose. It's something you fall into. And connected to that word, conditioned, is the idea of programs. And what's really being done is you're being programmed. That's what conditioning essentially is. And these programs are just word associations. They're just a connection between concepts and ideas and principles. And which ones you've been seduced by your personal experience to find comfort in, or to find harassing or irritating or revolting or in some way negative. And so there's a lot of this that's working inside of our psychology that we really don't see the cause and effect, but it's usually there somehow. If you don't like a certain color, it's probably because somebody in your past wore that color, and that somebody was somebody you didn't like, or they were irritating. I have sort of an association like that where I can remember a crabby old teacher in grammar school, and she always wore yellow hats. And I never much cared for the color yellow. So maybe it's not a coincidence. Yeah, maybe. So again, now that leads back again to this word reflexes, where we're just a bunch of charged reactions. And you can sort of see when something happens, when somebody says a word or somebody describes an image or shows you an image, even a picture, that there are associations in your brain. You identify elements in the object, and on a particular day you might identify different objects, and every day you might have a certain sensitivity built on what's the themes, what you've been thinking about lately. And so certain things that you've been thinking about lately will be more easily picked up out of the environment. Let's say I was working on computers a lot in the last couple of days. And somebody shows me a picture. It might have a very attractive girl in it, but then it might have a computer in the background with a keyboard. And my brain will see the keyboard. It'll identify the object because I have been, my brain has been focused on those kind of things for a couple of days. And so there's a kind of seeding that takes place through your daily experience. It essentially seeds you for the next response. Your next reaction will be necessarily probably keyed on these elements that are consistent with your current theme, the current theme of your life. And so you'll see, depending on your mood, so that there's another word I'll put down. That mood is really this disposition. So that's another word that's kind of interesting. That is created, inside of you, and this is just the charging of your reflex. And now you will tend to focus on things that are compatible to that mood, and see things in either more personal ways, selfish, or more complex ways, depending on how much philosophy you've been doing lately. How much thinking about the world and its problems will change your reaction to a particular bit of information or experience. So the next words I had written down were acclimation and assimilation, and how that relates to this concept of well adjustment. So there's this idea that your will, your disposition, should be a certain kind of disposition, that there's a way of describing that in some sort of social terms or cultural terms, where you have the appropriate sensibilities and this appropriate tolerances, and because you have the appropriate reflexes, you're within the appropriate realm of what has been declared as most reasonable. One could argue that if I was to place you in the 10,000 years ago in civilization, there might be many elements of that daily lifestyle that you'd find unacceptable. What they have accepted as a circumstance of life, like the death of their children or some other thing, where you would find it excessively brutal. Surgery without anesthesia, certain things that you just couldn't really imagine that people can live this way, because you haven't acclimated to it or assimilated to it. You're not adjusted to it, and you might not think there's reason to adjust to it. And so I would argue that this idea of well adjustment is kind of just a concept of Borg. You just argue that no matter what we think, in a sense, it's going to be a Borg. You're going to be driven by the Borg of logic, or the Borg of visceral, native, natural compulsions and impulses. It's all a kind of processing, and none of the processing has anything to do with you particularly. You're just the instrument. You're just the device to be programmed, and you'll either be programmed by themes or ideas, stories, narratives. That's another good word. Narratives to live by, storytelling about what you're really accomplishing or what you're doing. And those stories, like Little Red Riding Hood or Goldilocks, you'll pick a story, Henny Penny, a theme of either you're to be panicked, or you're to be comfortable, or you're to be motivated, again, to be measuring the environment, seeking from it a different kind of food, depending on what narrative you've chosen for your life, which one is the mechanism, the kind of heroin you're addicted to, the kind of drug you're addicted to. Are you addicted to a crude confirmation of your ego and your value, in the sense that you're strong and macho and you come to the rescue, or do you have a more subtle description of your ability to care for people, or to in subtle ways improve people's lives and therefore feel better about yourself? Or is your standard only one that's internal, where you say, I didn't get, as long as I'm not in prison, I'm winning, that kind of attitude. So you can take, as long as you get away with it, different kinds of morality based on a different structure or connection to understanding and notions of understanding. So, I have that later in the list, but that should be in here now probably, is this idea of the difference that what knowledge does to your programming, that every vocabulary word you acquire an understanding of just adds to the complexity of your reflexes, because now you're able to more subtly and more narrowly define things and describe things. You don't have to just say wet. You can say how wet. You can talk about humidity or viscosity, or some other more technical element, and be more exact in your reflexive reactions, because you'll be able to tell the difference between subtle gradations, and you'll be able to see something coming before it gets here, kind of thing. Be better at predicting consequences as you can understand more about the probability. If I took to inverse the analogy, if I took somebody from the long past and brought him to the future and had him just use the one-armed bandit, of the gambling house, the slot machine, would he be able to understand the probabilistic nature of it? What the chances of winning, or will he start standing on one foot and saying voodoo words to try to make it pay off, because he would think that somehow this machine might be influenceable, that it's not just running some mathematical algorithm, some mechanical algorithm, that creates a very small probability of winning, but it's an exact probability in a sense. But with understanding, we can understand our psychology. We can understand how, we can be deceived into thinking there's a better chance of something happening than is the truth. We feel lucky, or we can feel unlucky. And those feelings are sometimes much more powerful than the logical knowledge that might seed them. And the influence of the raw knowledge doesn't necessarily make it possible for you to overcome a feeling, an intuitive, shortly, something visceral, a first reflex. So I guess that's something to understand about reflexes, is that we have more than one. We are continually reflexively reacting to a circumstance. We have a first reaction, a knee jerk, and then our body reacts with the appropriate response, and then our body takes in this new information of the new environment created by our influence on it. So I pushed the thing a little to the left, and now the world has changed. Now there's another reaction. Well, it's not left enough. Push it a little further. And, then I push it too far. And then the reaction is push it back the other way. And so that's sort of the feedback mechanism. We're always reacting to the world and saying, are we comfortable with it yet? Is this the way it should be? Is it in the right spot? And that's kind of what our reflexes are doing. They're saying, is this good enough? Is this right? Is there something, can I just push it to the left a little more and make it right? Is there some way I can influence it to make things work? So influence was the next word, and that's sort of another big subject in the sense of this idea of talking, of saying things, and then conveying an understanding, and conveying an understanding of the importance of what you understand, in the sense that these are your reflexes, your reaction to words. And then this gets into a kind of a complex nuance of what's the nature of your experience, your acquisition of knowledge. Do you gain it because somebody charmed you, somebody charming says it, right? If I'm if I'm somebody else, a female or something, and I just sort of seduce you to the dark side, sort of thing, that's the seduction is a real mechanism. We see it happen to ourselves, and that propaganda does and can work. And there's so many elements to this whole idea of what influences the character of your conditioning, of your reaction themes, your tendency to react a certain way. And when we argue with each other, we're attempting to create logical streams, connections. For example, I could use anything as an example. I could say blackbird and say I believe, or I understand the truth to be, that blackbirds are really malicious leprechauns trying to take over the world. And so I could have this knowledge, and I could say, how can I convey this knowledge to somebody else? Well, I have to explain it to them, how they gained control of blackbirds and blah, blah, blah. But let's say I jump ahead of that, and I just want you to act as if you understood. Then I could just propagandize about blackbirds. And I could say, well, blackbirds poo a lot, and they eat garbage, and they do this, and they do that. And I could just emphasize the negatives. And I could try to get a theme inside of your head where you recognize this. And maybe I could find something that you really like say you really like cats. And then I could say, yeah, and blackbirds peck holes in cat brains. It's a known fact. Look it up. And because I did that, because I connected blackbirds to something you care about, I now have, I found the weapon. I found the key that'll work for you. Because now I can taint blackbirds. I can give you some doubt about their character. I can make you act as if they are evil leprechauns, because I've associated them with something negative happening to something you do care about. And this is the game of conversation and persuasion. So instead of largely having some sort of honest communication with each other, we end up doing stupid things like saying, that guy's fat. Fat people don't know what the hell they're talking about. That guy has long hair and looks kind of, look, there's paint chips on his ceiling, and he's unkempt, and he can't know what he's talking about because he's almost homeless. We do that kind of crap instead. But we usually do it when somebody's saying something we really don't want to hear. When somebody's attempting to build a logical construction that will mean we have to sacrifice something that, for example, I could be talking about vegetarianism and making really rational arguments about how, well, there's no real difference between a sentient pig and a 2-year-old human. I mean, there really isn't in terms of a brain function. The sentient adult pig is quite emotional, quite alive and real and conscious. And it would be silly to say it's less conscious, less substantive in its experience than, a 2-year-old human. I would almost argue that it'd be stupid to say that it's on any level of age, just because the real meaning of our existence is our emotional feelings, our capacity to suffer. And the pig has a certain capacity to suffer. And there's, I could just make this simple logical argument that there's no rational way, except the bigotry. You're just being a bigot if you're eating the pig and not eating the 2-year-old. Or at least not finding excuses to harm a 2-year-old. Certainly if we use 2-year-olds for medical experiments, we could gain an awful lot of progress in medicine. So, but clearly you would say that would be wrong. I'm pretty sure you would. And so your hypocrisy or your duplicity is exposed. Now you don't want to hear that. So then you can just start saying something derogatory about who I am and why I don't have any character, or why I don't have any credibility, or some other thing. So you can discount and evade. You can associate the argument, the message, with the messenger, right? So this is a classic um, danger or fallacy to be wary of, is this idea of discounting information based on the messenger. But clearly there's the more aggressive abuse where people use weaknesses in the messenger to destroy messages they just don't want to hear. They just don't want to know. Cat's complaining about something. Sorry. But this is what it takes. This is the nature of progress. And so you could argue that there is some logical momentum in the world. People have gotten some basic things, as a culture, we have become a little more civilized. Still a long, long way to go in terms of any sense of equity or trying to make deserve have something to do with it. Trying to add a real fairness to the character of the games we're playing. We've gotten rid of the overt slavery, but we're still extorting desperation. We're still abusing people's desperation to drive wages down, to force or oblige people to work for far less than the value of their labor. And so there's lots of progress to be made in terms of understanding that there's no victory. You can't really win. Okay, if your comfort comes at somebody else's expense, at their discomfort, it's not a winning scenario. It's not logically understandable as victory. But that's another one of these things where you have to have this sort of knowledge, this deeper knowledge of how the game is really played to be able to get around making those mistakes. Sorry, cat. Without that knowledge, you're just doing some natural thing, which is I'm a bug, I want, I take, and not doing anything deeper than that. But once you have some knowledge of the deeper game, once you understand the rules, you almost don't need umpires anymore, right? Sometimes you can play a game and you just understand that even if the umpire's not going to see me cheat, I'm not going to cheat because I would see me cheat. And I would lose respect for myself if I won a victory by cheating. So that's a whole nother different level of acquisition of understanding, where you now change your reflexes, change your psychology gets changed because you acquire an understanding that to be a real alpha, because you saw some real alphas have this kind of integrity, to be a real one, to be a real legitimate one, that you have to win fair, that you have to win playing by the rules. Cheating, although advantageous in some short-term, small-minded way, isn't a good enough victory. It's too shallow, too plastic, and it won't be a victory that's durable for you. You won't be able to hold on to it. You'll throw it up, so to speak, as a victory, because it will haunt you that you didn't get it the right way. You didn't earn it. It's not made out of real gold. It's made out of something that will tarnish and will rust. And so you know ahead of time that you're just too smart to be a cheater. You have too much integrity or too much character to be a cheater. And this is just a program running inside your head. It's just knowledge activated through a connection and association of words, where you see your penis get smaller, in your mind, if you don't do it the right way, if you cut corners and diminish and insult your own character by not doing it the right way. Hey, cat, get out of there. Sorry, cat. It's really bad timing. Anyway, so that's it's really, you get changed by exposure, knowledge, people providing really good examples. This is the kind of stuff that makes the difference. All right, come on, cut out. Come on, hurry up. Right now. Go. Let's go. Outside. Yeah. All right, sorry about the interruption. shit happens, as I say. But that's sort of it, right? And some of this shit that happens is you fall into a character trap. You know, your character just gets better, and the price for that usually means that your life's going to get harder. You're going to be burdened by an understanding that there's right ways to do things and wrong ways, and you know, the means don't justify the end. Isn't justified by the means. The means doesn't justify the end necessarily. You have to, has to be done. There's just that simple truth. There's the efficient and right way to do it, the acceptable and the unacceptable. And so we're back to this acclamation and acceptance word, but acceptable is a very good word. You know, what we accept is constantly changing day to day, you know, based on what we, you know, our tolerances, our strength, how much we've, you know, how difficult our week will dictate how acceptable having an argument with somebody is, or some other nuisance. And we'll have the ability to acclimate and accept, or we won't, you know, just based on fatigue and, you know, what's happened to either make us stronger, build us up. We've had a good week, and so we have a greater and more expansive tolerance, or we have less. But we don't freely choose any of this. This disposition is a constantly evolving, moment to moment through our life. Your character is changing in very subtle ways sometimes, but nonetheless, it does get changed. You know, you become a better person. You become more aware, more deliberate. You start to understand that sometimes you need to think about what you're going to do before you're going to do it. And you need to think hard and careful, because in the past, those quick decisions were not very reliable in terms of providing you with the best solution or the best answer. So what I'm really trying to do here is just point out that if you start thinking about these words and start thinking about the fact that you're just reacting, that your body is reacting in a sense, your brain is reacting, your consciousness is just along for the ride, that you just see yourself become a better person. One day you watch something, you see it, it moves you through a reflex, and you gain a even greater appreciation, or you're liberated from some other, you know, social meme or norm or standard, and all of a sudden your life can change from one where you're worried about what other people think, and now you start worrying about what you think, and the opinion that becomes important is your own. And that standard can be much higher. And it's one of those ironies of life, is that you know, you have to sometimes look inside yourself to find the truth, in the sense that you're already been suppressed. You always existed, but you were persuaded, propagandized into living a fake life by a society that pressured you to do it, that kept seducing you, little bits of chocolate, to play their game rather than to play the game that you may have logically knew was right all along. So anyway, that's about it for time. So till next time, continue listening and such, and think about programming, think about thinking, and that very process will likely make you think better. It's just mechanical. A computer's better if it spends some time cleaning the hard drive. Clean your hard drives. Yeah, run that program. That's my attempt to influence you. That's my propaganda. Sorry, I'm a little over time now, I think. Until next time.